Okay. 6:02, and we have a quorum, so I will get this meeting kicked off. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, the subcommittee meeting will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with the right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the city's website at www.salem.com. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the city's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch, listen, or provide comment, if applicable, during the meeting may do so in the following manner. Please click on the link listed below to join the webinar. Go to the website link zoom.us/join, enter webinar ID. I don't have the webinar ID, 889-8339-1033, followed by the meeting password above if directed to do so on screen. By participants can dial a toll-free number at 877-853-5257 when prompted. Enter the meeting and webinar ID and follow the instructions to join the meeting. The City Council Committee on Public Health, Safety, and Environment, co-posted with Committee of the Whole, will meet via Zoom on April 27th at 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the matters of meeting with the Friends of the Salem Common to discuss plans and fundraising for maintenance and repair of the interior, as well as we have 2 items on the agenda tonight, as well as the petition from Steve Kapandis to address the city's compliance to ADA law. Notice of this meeting was posted on April 22nd at 10:03 a.m. This meeting is being recorded. In attendance, we have from the PHSC committee, we have Councilors Presnewski, Councilor Marcillo, and myself. Also in attendance, so absent are Councilors Dibble and Dominguez.
Councilor Dibble is there.
He's here?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Hello, Councilor Dibble. I had to page forward. Let me make my screen bigger. Jenna, I see you as well. So just absent is Councilor Dominguez. Also in attendance is a lot of attendees tonight. So Councilor Hapworth is also in attendance. And we have from the Friends of Salem Commons, we have Susan Moulton, Liz Aberg, Marianne Curtin, and Leslie Harrington. We also have Dennis Maroney from the Salem Common Neighborhood Association. And from the City of Salem, we have Jenna Ide and Ray Jordan, saying her name wrong, sorry, and Alyssa Doherty, who will help as we get to agenda item 2 this evening. So thank you everyone for attending this evening. We will go into the first agenda item, which is the Friends of Salem Common. This was brought to the council to discuss plans and fundraising efforts for the maintenance of the Salem Common interior. And then members of the city were also invited as well to discuss the projects that are in flight and going forward. So since we do have 2 agenda items on the docket for tonight, I would like to try to maybe allot 45 minutes max to both if we need it. And then that will get us out around a little past 7. Does anyone have any concerns with that plan?
No.
Okay, so Ms. Moulton, if you're still good to go, I will actually throw the mic over to you to begin with your presentation if you'd like.
Thank you very much. We very much appreciate your time. This meeting came about as a follow-up to a meeting we had with Councilor Presnewski, where we were talking about the work that we're doing, and he thought it might be helpful to present this to the group as a whole. I did email to you, Councilor Riccardi, the executive summary of this work, which you feel free to share as you would like. The Friends of the Salem Common came together just about 2 years ago to look at the Common as a whole. We decided to become a 501c3, and our mission statement is on the page in front of you. Can you see the screen share that I'm doing? Okay.
Yeah.
And also we presented this before to Dennis Maroney and I think Ray and I think Jenna. So Thank you for sitting through this again. We'll try and be brief. Our general concern is that while the city clearly invests money in the Salem Common, there is more that needs to be done than current city funds are able to support. So we thought it was helpful, as has been done with a number of efforts in the city of Salem, to create a Friends group. We've really modeled our work after the Friends of the Boston Public Garden, and in November of 2019, received a $50,000 donation and hired on the company of Halverson, Ty and Bond out of Boston to do an inventory conditions assessment and conceptual master plan for the Common. They began their work in February 2020 and delivered their report in August. Their purpose really was first to look at what is the condition of what's in the Common, then what needs to be done to bring that condition up to date, and what are the costs for that. And then their third effort is called a master plan, which is really a misnomer in a way because we're not really changing anything. The Halverson report looked at a series of issues that you're seeing here: the paving issues, metal edging, concrete paths, secondary entrances, and then sidewalk paving. The furnishings, which includes receptacles, doggy waste stations, benches, signage, wayfinding, main entry plaza improvements, tree care, site lighting, lawns and ground covers, landscape near the bandstand, and irrigation. The report specifically did not look at the fence or the bandstand because the city has both invested in those and has a plan going forward, nor did the report look at the arch because that really has been the work of the Salem Common Neighborhood Association. So I just want to briefly give you an example of what they found and how they did their work. So when you look at the paving issue, they gave us an assessment. They explained how much paving there is, what type. They explained where the stone dust is, problems with the steel edging, issues around the main entrance. So that's the condition. Then they do recommendations as to what needs to be done to improve the paving assessment. And they recommend replacing the metal edging in certain areas, creating raised granite edges and planting beds, repair or clean sections of the surface, resolve accessibility issues, ADA issues, which I'll get to in a bit, pave the sidewalk right down here at the bottom. The Hawthorne Hotel is over here just to orient you, so that it's better for tour bus parking and the kind of traffic that section includes. And then they gave us a cost. So what it will cost for that. And within the appendices to the report, they break those costs down very specifically. They looked at the benches. The Common currently has 24 of different sizes and lengths. The conditions vary, but most are old and weathered. The spacing is sparse and a little random. And some are
clear and 66 degrees.
Oops.
Sorry.
Some are, you may want to mute yourself, Marianne. Some are anchored, some are not. They made recommendations about how best to manage the benches, and they recommend restoring and then adding 20 benches and placing them evenly along the promenades on concrete paths set back with certain spacing in between. And again, as you can see here, they give us options. Option 1 is to restore and match. Option 2 is to purchase new benches. We did have a conversation with both Ray and Jenna, and I think the city's assessment is that it actually will be more cost effective to replace them rather than try and fix them all up. But again, they give you pictures, and again with costs. Same with the trash receptacles. They've done an assessment of how many there are and the problems with them, and then they provide recommendations, replacing them with a single model of a certain type. Again, costs are included. They've looked at signage and wayfinding. There really isn't much signage there now. There's really one sign of historic value. There's no wayfinding signage in place. And then they provide recommendations. The example here at the bottom comes from what this particular company did at the Cambridge Common. It's a wayfinding sign of sorts, which we could put at the Salem Common as well. And again, the costs here vary a little bit depending upon how much we want to do. They looked at the lighting. There are currently 34 lights. They are uneven. There are sections of the Common that are quite dark. The type of lighting sources are quite varied. If you walk the Common, some are white, some are yellow, some are a little bluish. and the lighting poles need some work. So they provided, again, recommendations to refinish them. They recommended that that the city add new lighting to decrease the number from 34 to 45. Again, they give two options. One is to restore with a cost, and one is to replace with a cost. They look particularly at the trees, and if you look at the report, they've actually identified what needs to be done with every single tree in the common. They've given us the breakdown of the trees, the assessment of their condition, and what needs to be removed and what needs to be pruned. Again, the recommendations are to come up with a schedule of pruning on a regular basis and a plan to replace the existing Norway maples. The common is heavily dominated by Norway maples, and in changing climate areas, it is better to have a variety of trees that work better given what's going on. And again, they provide a cost of tree care and tree replacement. Similarly, they look at the lawns and the ground covering. Again, the assessment and the recommendations. If you look at the common here, here's the entrance. This is the section here that needs particular work. This is where haunted happenings happens. And there's a lot of heavy compacted soil that's tough for the trees. They just don't get enough water through, so that needs to be air spaded. And this is the little section right in front of the bandstand. And they even looked at the irrigation system. It works, but not as well as it should. There are sections that don't get irrigation. There are sections that need to be repaired, and the flow of the water needs to be managed as well. And then they recommend that we do something a little different with the entrance. Again, they recommend some granite edgings to be installed around the front with some plantings, a wayfinding sign, and perhaps 3 large planters that kind of tell you, here's the common, here's what it could be. And they then provide an implementation plan that lists both the costs and the time frame of what they recommend. Again, this is a recommendation to the city. The city can take this and change it and use it as much as it would like, but it does provide a very detailed breakdown of the work they recommend. We were happy to get a little article in the Patch about work that we'd done last year, where we worked with Representative Paul Tucker and Senator Joan Lovely and got a $50,000 state appropriation that has now been given to the city. And Ray would know this better than I. Our point of contact with the city is Trish O'Brien from Parks and Rec. And after some back and forth, the city is going to use some of this money to actually make the curb cuts ADA accessible. It is ready, has a bidder or a vendor in place to do that work. And then the remaining monies would be to purchase some ADA accessible benches. So this is a little press release that describes that. One of the things that we have trying to understand, and we welcome your attention, is the city has any number of parks, and like most cities, it doesn't have the money available to manage and maintain these parks on a regular basis. The one exception is the Salem Common, where the city council a number of years ago actually created, and this is from the ordinances here, a special fund called the Salem Common Receipts Reserved for Appropriation Fund. And monies that are generated from events that happen on the common are required to be placed into this fund, used solely for the care and maintenance of the common. That's a wonderful thing to have. We have not been successful in understanding what those monies are or how they could be used, and would welcome your thoughts on how best to do that, because that's a unique asset that the common alone has that I know the city would like to take advantage of. I'm going to stop there, just to show you the level of detail that's in the reports. When you go to the benches, it gives you the option of the number of units and the cost, quantity of units and the cost per unit, et cetera. So the information that's provided for each of these elements for the city to use is quite detailed. And I won't bore you with it, but we believe that this information is helpful to the city, and that's what it's designed to be used for. That's what we have. That's what we're working on. Our next effort is to plan out a fundraising effort, and that really also means some conversations that I would like to have with Jenna, haven't had yet, to understand what does the city have in place for funds, what is it thinking about depending on how much those monies are, what does it want to spend the money on? And therefore, what should we undertake fundraising efforts for? If the city is going to redo the lights within a grant or a budget, we don't want to raise money for the lights. So that needs to be a conversation where we would like some guidance from the city as to where it has identified funds for what purpose and how we can be helpful and augment that effort. So let me stop talking there and answer any questions you might have. Hi, Councilor Domingo. Thank you. Nice to see you as well.
Yes, so Councilor Dominguez and Councilor Madore also joined us. Thank you for joining. And thank you for that presentation, Susan. So I think maybe a next step might be to have Jenna or Ray talk about projects that are in flight or are planned. It was kind of touched on briefly about the curb cuts and an ADA bench as well. But if there's anything else, Jenna or Ray, if you'd like to add on to that or expand on that a little, I think that would be helpful.
So, thank you.
Go ahead, Ray.
Hi, Jenna. Do you want to go first, Jenna, or?
I'll let you go first.
Understood. Thank you, ma'am. So thank you, everybody, for coming together. So a couple projects like Susie kind of touched upon. We are in the process of securing funding right now for a contractor by the name of Tasco Construction. They're utilizing our construction bid for the curb cuts along the common. So we're still trying to in the process of doing that as well. Since it is a grant funded project, it will take a little bit of time to line up that to make sure that it apples and apples to the grant funding. We do have funds set aside like Trish said before, for benches. So we're trying to do the balancing act between do the curb cuts and then whatever is remaining, try to look at doing bench installs, making them more ADA appropriate, moving them forward closer to the stone dust path, making sure that they're anchored in, making sure that people can gain access to them, making sure that there's maybe an appropriate pad to the left or to the right that can facilitate a wheelchair, something along those lines. At the same time, we're also working with Aggregate to redo all the stone dust paths. I'm still waiting for a start date shortly on that, but that's in the works as well.
That's great. Thank you. That's good to hear.
Let me see what else is on the docket. I'm working with Dennis Maroney on the Common Arch. We're looking at trying to restore the Common Arch pad underneath. That would include a planting and some brickwork and some cobbles and some nice ornate pieces to go with that, well with some informational signage that'll go on that, some wayfinding information. So that'll definitely be a plus. I can let Dennis speak a little bit more on that aspect, but right now we're in the process of trying to secure up some appropriate costs, and then we'll be submitting them to the State Historical Commission for approval.
Ray, I just have a quick question. I was told by Trish that the bench issue has to go before the Historical Commission. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I can speak. So in addition, we received money, various pockets of capital funding over the years. Most have been appropriated to the common fence. So we have had a total of 1.1 million in funds allocated to the common fence over the past, it's at least 6 or 7 years. Some of that is grant funded, but I'd say the majority is capital funded, some CPA, and then we did get some cultural fund and historic grants. So we are in the final phase. Lev is managing that out of the planning department. Final sort of push to get the phase 5 of the common fence restoration project done. So after that is complete, we're just signing the contracts now with the contractor. We will be able to go into construction. That should probably be done this summer. So that we're talking 95 sections out of 253 will have been completed, including 17 bollards. There would be 158 remaining if we were to have to restore all of them, which if you sort of put it in a 10, 20-year arc, you may. And by restore, some have to be fully replaced, some have to be fixed, some have to be just repainted and scrubbed down. So, an average cost of about $13,000 per section. That's slightly escalated based on the cost of all the previous ones we've gone out to bid for. So the total upfront cost would be about $2 million. That would be upfront right now. If you spread that over 10, 15, 20 years, that would, it's more because you're spreading it over time and that escalation catches up with you. So that's sort of giving you a sense of where we are with the fence. We also received 1.5 million from the signature park funds for the common. A big chunk of that is targeted toward the Salem Common Bandstand. As you know, we did do phase 1, which was the apron, dust path around the apron, and a new hatch. And that portion is complete. We have a little bit of remaining funds from that, which we'll use toward the future phase. And we got 60,000 for the study of the next phase, and then we have and design, of the next phase, and then we have the 1.5 million. We're estimating it about 800,000 at this point, but that we estimated that back 2-3 years ago. So we probably have to, once we get a designer on board, have to really kind of think that through. So I would say you're probably looking at about 700,000 remaining that potentially could be allocated for these other capital needs. It is certainly not going to take care of everything, and I think with the common bandstand, it's likely that we'll get some grant money. Historic grant would be one potential, the CPA, and potentially some donations or other sources of funding that I know a lot of you guys are all have a lot of different ideas. So the 1.5 million was meant to leverage as much as possible to be able to sort of, almost every grant is a sort of match. So hopefully we can leverage as much as possible. But knowing that, there are sort of a loan, if you just fixed every section of the fence, that would be more than we have in capital funds. And, if you just the fence and the common bandstand would probably be about 2.8 million. So that doesn't even include the irrigation, the sort of redesign of some of the front area, the lighting, and sort of redoing the whole portions of the grass, or sort of a major tree, overhaul. Some of this tree planting, turf overhaul, dust path can be put into operational budgets and things like that and sort of done over the years. But some of these other big projects like the fence, the bandstand, a redo of the lighting would probably require capital. So hopefully that helps you where we are. The common bandstand next phase, I'm really trying to finish up Forest River. That's a big project. And we also have Willows and Pioneer Village. And so we have a lot of other things going on at the common and kind of trying to finish those other big projects before we start the next phase of common bandstand. The goal would be have it completely ready and open and available by like 2025 for our quadricentennial in 2026. So the next phase is full restoration of all the masonry, the windows, new windows, electrical, and sort of cleaning it and sort of fixing some of the masonry units and flashing and weatherproofing and all that kind of stuff. So, and historic preservation of the asset. So, if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you. So I'll open it up to the committee for questions. I also note that Councillor McCarthy has joined us. Do we have any questions from the committee? Councillor Dibble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is exciting. I just want to thank the Friends of the Salem Common for stepping forward in this way. This is a good thing. The report looks amazingly thorough. Back in about 1984, a similar type of study was done of Salem Common, and as a result, plans were put into place in 85, and then 1986, a overhaul of the Common was put into place by restoring the fence all the way around, by putting in the new concrete walkways, by redoing this. Actually, they built the stone dust path all the way around, the granite cobbles out by the Hawthorne Hotel end. There were so many improvements throughout the whole Common. including some 72 red oak trees. Quite a bit of work was done. And then subsequent to that, that was my first year working for the city of Salem, and I had a little bit to do with the restorations at the end of the restorations, if you would, because a fellow coworker named Jonathan was leaving, and then they gave me the assignment to wrap up the work. I managed the sprinkler system for about 12 years after that point, marked them all out where the lines were for the circus tents, on and on. The sprinkler system is probably still in good shape, and probably the heads just need to be adjusted or replaced. So that should not be a huge cost. I'd recommend to get the tree portion of the work into the hands of Ray Jordan or to our tree warden and let him start the work. Our new tree warden is phenomenal, and he's doing a great job all around the city.
We have worked with him a little bit. I think he started to identify some of the trees that need to come down, and so we are big fans as well.
That's awesome. He is. We're really happy that he's working for us. There's a few other trees that we put in a few years later. Some Zelkovas over.
You muted yourself, Councillor.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Not sure what you.
No, I think you're hitting the mute button again. Sorry, something. There you go.
Okay, I did it a different way this time. Zoom is interesting. So I'm glad the tree work, hopefully with Ray Jordan, hopefully the tree work can be done by our tree warden as time allows. You know, when he doesn't have other emergencies and other things, hopefully he can get in there for a day or two and then take care of some other work, come back to the common until the whole project is done. It's probably many days down there with all these trees. The benches, when they were first put in, I had nothing to do with it, but I looked at them. They were of pretty much a residential quality. They were pretty cheap, and they were all breaking right away. And then we replaced them with another one, and then with a heavier duty version of that. Then there's a third one. I think there's 4 different types of benches, I think, down there. I'm not sure how many are down there now, but there was a variety of them, and it's really too bad. It should be uniform. I like having the arm rest in the middle of the bench, which whatever model comes along. There's a lot of work to be done. Ray, for you in particular, we hired Mackey & Sons back about mid-1990s or early 1990s to restore the Stone Dust Walkway. And he came in with his paving machine, which sounds crazy, which that puts down asphalt. And he loaded it up with, this is Dan Mackey. I believe Dan's no longer with us. I'm not sure. His brother Herb is still around, though. Anyway, he used a paving machine and he striked the stone dust down into place, and then he rolled it with a roller afterwards, and it was perfect. It came out like glass, hard, in place, the right place, and it lasted for like a decade. It was so that was a great way of doing it. I've repaired stone dust walkways other ways, but that was by far the best way to make it last.
Thank you, Councilor. Yeah, so we've actually secured Aggregate Industries to follow that practice.
Yeah. It worked out great. So I'll be quiet now, but I just really want to thank the friends for coming forward and helping to get us to properly maintain the Salem Common. And some items are bigger than just maintenance, I understand, but a lot of this is maintenance as well. The last thing on the fence, Jenna mentioned phase 5. I put out to bid probably about 8 Salem Common fence restorations back in the 80s and 90s. And we've spent millions and millions of dollars on the Salem fence. And all the way along the line, we kept on talking about changing the design so it would look the same, but having better materials in that metal fence that would make it last. Hopefully, I've been gone from City Hall since for the last, for 16 years, I was gone from City Hall. I left in the year 2000. And then I got elected to the City Council. But hopefully, we're about to have conversation to change the materials and the way the fence, the metal part of the fence is made, because it doesn't last the way we've been doing it for forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dizzle. Any other questions from the committee or comments? Councilor Presniewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to tip my hat to the Friends of the Salem Common for taking the initiative on their own to have this report funded from what I understand, by the owner of the Hawthorne Hotel, Mike Harrington, and then also to getting out and hitting the streets and advocating to raise more funding from the state through Representative Tucker and Joan Lovely, and being able to get another $50,000. That's no small feat for an independent group of people that had an interest, and we're looking to help out in some way. I really do tip my hats, and also to the Salem Common Association, who's always been looking out for the betterment of the common, and is working with this group to turn what I believe to Salem's finest masterpiece. I think that every visitor that comes to Salem, besides looking at the highlights, I think the biggest highlight is the Salem Common, and it probably has the biggest wow factor, especially if it looks nice, which is something I'm hoping to see in the near future. I just have a couple of questions because while everyone was talking and throwing out figures, math wasn't my best subject, so I'm trying to scribble down a bunch of numbers over here. Jenna, we got 1.5 million from the signature funds for the parks, which was allocated to the common, correct?
Correct. 1.5 for the common.
All right. And the bandstand is what was decided, which needed to be fixed, and I agree. And how much of that 1.5 million is for the bandstand? Is the bandstand going to cost us?
Well, so the 1.5 is for, however we allocate it. It's estimated that the bandstand will cost, this phase of the bandstand will cost $800,000, but I have to revisit that estimate. That's 2 years old, and so. Okay.
And the fence restoration, we're spending 1.1 million for 95 sections, and there's 203 sections. It seems to be quite a bit of a lot of money still yet to be spent. But aside from the fence, I'm not sure whether I heard it correctly. It looks like in order to cover everything, we need about another $700,000. Was I getting all that correctly? If we were going to fix the lights, the trees, the walkways, the benches, everything, we're looking at about another $700,000 that we're short. Is that about right, Jenna?
I don't have that. I haven't done the sort of full calculation. I know, Susan, I don't know how much your
Yeah, the summary I think is 2.9 million to do all the work that's recommended. But again, we did not look at include cost for the fence or the bandstand or the arch. So
right. So if theirs is about, what did you say, 3 million?
Yeah, call it 3.
There's another 3 million with everything else. So with the fence, the arch, and the bandstand. So 6 million. But I think there's portions of what the Susan was talking about is, probably could be done in operational expenses, some of the trees and dust paths and things like that. So if you pulled out just the capital items,
right,
it may go down to like 5 million. So.
And this report also recommends year 1 to 5 and year 6 to 10. So it doesn't all have to come over the next year or two,
right.
Which is another option. But we intend to go out and raise money privately. And I would love to have an offline conversation with you, Jenna, on a couple questions I have there, but I don't want to take up everyone's time on that. So we can really understand what we can raise money for, because people want to know what they would be giving money for.
Susan, when we spoke before, I know that you've already raised the $100,000, and there was talk about the possibility of being able to tap into your state connections and being able to get even more money, state money coming in. And I'm not sure how that would work with the city also advocating for that. But
we have spoken. I don't want to promise money that hasn't been appropriated, but we have spoken to Representative Tucker and Senator Lovely, who are going to go back and make another request for $100,000 for the Salem Common for this coming budget. So that's a request, can't be promised, but it's one of Representative Tucker's top items. And then we need to raise private money to support that. So we will put together a plan on how best to do that and who to target, et cetera. I do have a question, and maybe this isn't the forum. But the language that the city council created that creates a special fund that says that money for events that occur on the common is to go into a special fund and be used for the maintenance and care of the common. We would welcome trying to understand how best to see what that money is and how we can, what that fund is and how we could use it, how it can be used for the Salem Common. Maybe that's an offline conversation, but it is something we wanted to mention.
Yep, and also I know Trish O'Brien from the Parks and Rec Department wasn't able to attend this evening, but we can definitely follow up to get information as well. Councillor McCarthy? You're on mute.
Thank you, Madam Chair, not being a member of the committee. Yes, Tricia's actually, I tried to call her today about something else. She's actually on vacation this week. All that being said, I guess my first question goes to Jenna. I'll go back to what Councilor Dibble had to say about all his efforts back in the 80s with regards to the fence. That fence is a nightmare. The fact that they're making it out of cast and it's not steel and it can't be welded so it can't be repaired is just costing us millions and millions of dollars annually that, you know, all of a sudden, whether it's one of our plow trucks, whether it's a private contractor plowing out of someone's business yard or whatever around the common, that is hitting that fence, and once it breaks, it's cast. You can't weld it, you can't repair it. Why are we entertaining the idea of replacing that fence with cast? Why aren't we going back? Why aren't we going to steel? Is my first question, because you know, I don't know what the decisions were made back in the 80s or whenever it was, whenever that fence went up, to go with some sort of cast. But if we can get something out of steel that looks the same, replicates it, looks like it, but then is able to be maintained. I understand, you know, the advantages of cast are the fact that, you know, it holds paint better. It's not going to rust. I understand all those aspects, but the fact of the matter is, if you hit it, dent it, the cast breaks, snaps, and then ends up on the ground, and then we end up picking it up, and it ends up at the DPS storage facility, and then all of a sudden it just, you know, if we're lucky, we save a couple of the ornamental pieces that we can potentially reuse. But the sections are just, you know, unreusable because they're cast and you can't weld cast. So are we to the point where we're looking at, you know, alternatives? I mean, if it looks the same, it functions the same, people are happy with it. I mean, we could go back to photos from 200 plus years ago. I mean, it was a wood picket fence at one point. I mean, but now we've got this ornamental, you know, cast fence that we're trying to maintain. And I get that it's a beautiful fence, but the fact of the matter is it's not cost effective. It's not cost. So, I mean, at what point do we say that, you know, when we look at some of the work we're doing, do we stop with the trying to replicate exactly what's there? Because, you know, I don't know when it came in, but it's not working. It doesn't hold up in New England weather. Let's put it that way.
So I think, Bob, you bring up a good point, and many different people have brought up this point. And you know, those numbers I gave you are just sort of assuming we replace over 10 to 20 years, we replace as is the way we've been replacing. I'm not recommending that. I'm not saying what recommended we should do. So I think what we did say is that, you know, this last round, phase 5, that afterward we kind of take a pause a little bit. They've really focused on some of the sort of very visible and worse sections, and sort of take a pause along with all these other upgrades and really think through, you know, how we want to approach the fence. And I think you're right. Like, is there another way to approach it? Even if it's not the whole thing, certain sections, people have put out a variety of ideas. I think it would be worthwhile to have somebody look through these ideas and sort of vet it with, obviously, the historic commission, the community, the neighbors, et cetera. I think there's also the other thing that has to be addressed is the maintenance side, which is, Ray, you know, some of this is we need to have more funding to repaint and just repair instead of full restore. So that sort of keeps the life. And then really thinking through the security system and how we approach when somebody does knock a fence, and how any one of these snowplows or would have insurance. And so, you know, should we be sort of figuring out how we can better capture who might have done the damage. And then, that's what insurance is for, to take, address that. Or is there ways for us to put buffers so that it's less likely? I'm not talking like, orange cones, but something that would help prevent, the snow plows from hitting it. So I think there's a lot of sort of on the capital side, we could look at like how we might approach it differently. And that's really to sort out with the community and with the professionals who know about these things. And then I think from the maintenance and sort of how we approach the side, there's ways to do it. I think after this session, this phase 5, I think is a good time for us to sort of pause and say, okay, what do we want to do? We know we have all these other things, where do we want to go with this? And to ask those questions, and some are going to be, no, it's not going to work. And some are going to be, yeah, this is a good possibility. What does the community think? What does the historic commission think? How do we sort that? So I think it's very valid. Lots of people have brought it up, and I think we really need to start looking at those options.
I would agree. Thank you. If I can continue, Madam Chair, the obviously, somewhere in the past, I don't, I'm not going to. It doesn't matter when the decision was made. It was made, and they decided to go with CAST for whatever reason. And CAST just doesn't work. So I think it's important to get everyone on the same page, realizing that going forward, I know there's sections missing currently, and obviously for especially around some of the corners and stuff, was stuff seems to get piled. And unfortunately, it's probably a lot of either us being the city or our contractors that are doing it that have, especially around like where the basketball court is and the playground is. There's a bunch of sections missing, and we need to get those replaced. But I think moving forward, we need to come up with some sort of program going that the sections are going to be replaced with steel, something that it's going to hold up a little better. It's not going to snap and break. But I guess my next follow-up question is, and I want to commend to all the work being done and the study being done, and to have us give a point of reference as to what we need to do to enhance and maintain the common going forward. I think it's a great asset to the city. When I look at the line items relative to the stone dust walkways and the steel edging, I guess my question would go to Ray. Is it seems like the steel edging and the walkways are, in the words of the study, mitigating or migrating into the rest. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, the city and the residents want to maintain those areas as open, especially after snow events. And we're putting our own city plows, basically a pickup truck or whatever, an oversized pickup truck with a plow, trying to open up those walkways to maintain the walkability of the common. But at the same time, is our efforts in trying to maintain walkability actually hurting the walkways, because we're now mitigating. Now we're migrating stone dust into the grassy areas where with no disrespect to whoever's operating the plow, they're doing the best they can to try to open up these walkways. But at the same time, the steel edging is now, all you got to do is clip it with one plow blade. I mean, should we be, looking at a different way to try to maintain these areas during snow emergencies? And obviously, I understand that trying to hit it with a plow is probably the easiest, most cost-effective way to do it. But when you look at a study like this that's going to, target these areas, I think it's just the fact, it's a balance between, do you want to maintain the walkability of these areas during the winter months, or do you just basically want to not touch the common during the winter months and let, I don't know, do they want to get snowshoes? I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't do it. It's just that it becomes difficult because it is a stone dust walkway. I don't care, what kind of safeguards you put in to compact it. But the fact of the matter is, if you're going to put a piece of equipment on the walkway in order to clear it of snow, because New England is an area where we do have snow, and to clear the snow, you're going to run into a situation where you could disrupt the stone dust and or break the metal barriers that hold the stone dust in place, so it doesn't migrate into the grass. So it becomes a double-edged sword, because you don't know. I mean, I understand that lots and lots of people live around the common. Lots and lots of people use the common as a walkway to get to the train station when they're going to and from, when they're going into work in Boston and stuff. And I get that. But, I mean, sometimes when you look at the details of it, it seems like the fact that we're actually trying to, open up these walkways, because I had someone approach me this past winter. Why don't we plow the walkways in the willows? Because more and more people, during this whole COVID, why aren't we plowing the walkways in the willows? And the Common is the only park in the city of which we open up the walkways during the winter months. The rest of the parks, the walkways are left the way they are. So I guess the question becomes, I understand there's a line item, but it seems like we're opening up the walkways for a common good. And I've had this conversation with Ray, potentially maybe opening up one of the walkways through the willows, maybe the straight one through all the way to the water, not all of them, because it seems to be the straightest, widest one. But when you look at the Common, it's because it is stone dust and it does have steel edging. I think it's just a difficult situation is sometimes you can't avoid those things because the greater good is that you want it open. So I guess that's a bigger question is to, how much, we want to keep these walkways open for people to be able to walk and get to and from the train station. But at the same time is realizing open these up is going to probably incur some incidental damage that we don't want to incur, but it's going to happen. So I'll leave it to that. I don't know if Ray has any comments on that.
Right. No, and I appreciate that, Counselor. Thank you. Just to kind of reiterate on that, whenever we do snow removal in a park, there's always an opportunity for damage, especially when we operate our snowplow trucks. It's always there whenever we plow streets or whatever. We always try to minimize, but you are right. When we plow the Common, there's always a chance to hit the metal edging and possibly do damage. A lot of the damage was caused prior to contractors doing the snow removal. In the past 4 or 5 years, we actually have taken that over and have minimized the damage to the Common, which is to our detriment. But at the same time, we're also providing a level of service that people are expecting now, much like your constituents down the Willows are saying, well, they're doing it down the Common. Why can't we have it down the Willows? And we can meet and talk about that off radar, but you and I share the same sentiments on that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the committee or guests? Councillor Goodall?
Shut it off the other way. You can hear me now, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny. The phone is, the computer's acting up a little bit today. I'd have to agree with the Ward 1 councillor's comments just now. Very good, right on point. He's been around long enough to hear about all sorts of repairs to the fence. I think it's time. If the fence is, and Jenna, correct me wrong, I think you just threw out a number $1.1 million for the fence for phase 5. That sounds like a lot of money. But what is the dollar for phase 5?
So phase 5 is $187,000.
Okay.
The amount, including phase 5, that we have spent is $1.12 million, $1.1 million. So that's how much we've spent thus far, including phase 5.
Okay, I think that we take the $187,000 and look to do it and do it right. I'm not sure what right is, but there's a lot of fence experts out there that can guide us, and people in Salem that can guide us, that we don't have to keep doing it and making repairs to cast iron that, as Councilor McCarthy just said, it doesn't last. So I'd like to see us not wait another 30 or 40 years. In 1985, when the decision was to make repairs to the cast iron fence, that fence was in really bad shape and it was really old. So I don't know how old the fence is, but let's say 100 years. I don't know. Maybe it's much older. I honestly don't know how old the fence is. But I know firsthand that it's tough to fix, as Councilor McCarthy just said. We should save this money and put the money now, instead of just keep on talking about it, punting the problem down the road. Let's do it and do it right, and put a fence up that will last. I think we can do it so it looks historically appropriate. After years of many coats of paint and other things, it will start looking like that anyway. I don't think we want something that is glow-in-the-dark type metal, that is some sort of aluminum type structure that looks like it's brand new. We need to do it in a way that looks like it's historic. So whether it be steel, aluminum, or some other metal, I think we should take that route right now.
Thank you, Councillor Dibble. I will just note, I don't think the fence was on the agenda for this evening. I think it's me right now in general and not from this meeting. Any other members of the committee that wish to make comment? Councillor Marcillo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question for Susan and the group. First, thank you for the presentation and the work that you've done. It's great to have advocates for any of the parks in the city. My question is, out of all of the things that your report went through, what do you think is the highest priority as you guys, utilize the park on a daily basis? What do you think would have the most impact for a first fundraiser?
Well, I'll give you my thoughts, and we haven't come to consensus on this. I think the one major area would be to take the front of the common, create a wayfinding sign, and really create a more beautiful and more noteworthy entrance. You just kind of wander in off of the Hawthorne Hotel and it's not really clear where you are. So that would be one thing I would love to see. The second thing we've talked a lot about is lighting, both fix what is and add more, largely for a safety reason as well. If you walk the common at night, it gets a little dark, a little edgy in parts. So that would be a second area that I think we would have some interest in, but I don't want to speak for the group as a whole. That's actually one of the things we want to talk with the city about and talk with our board about to see if we can come up with a prioritization. And then I would add in trees, so it's Liz, do you have any comments you want to make?
Thank you. No, I agree with you, Susie. I think the front entrance could use some work. The cobblestones, again, need to be, there's some places the cobblestones are missing, they need repair. And a nice wayfinding sign, a map of the common, maybe give a little bit of the history of the common on that sign, like you say, when you come into the common. And I think as we move into the Salem 400, I think if there was some beautiful wayfinding sign that gave a bit of a history about the common, that would be something that's certainly probably less expensive than putting in new lights, but I think that could be done, and I think it would make a nice statement. And the lights, of course, what we all feel about the lights. They are beautiful. We could use more of them. There are some dark spots in the common, especially if you have a dog and you're out there walking your dog at night. It is dark in some places, so I think that's something that we could work on as well.
Thank you. So I'm going to actually piggyback off of Councillor Marcillo's question. Because of the need for really a prioritization of these items, has there been any meetings? I know there are different neighborhood associations within the common, and obviously the park is a part. I live over in North Salem, but I'm down at the common often with my daughter, so it's definitely a park that the whole city uses. Have there been there's been this meeting, have there been any other meetings to go over the items that are in the report that you had completed with the neighborhood associations, with the residents, with the historical commissions, to find out kind of any feedback or items that they may have interest in?
So I can tell you, we briefed the Salem Common Neighborhood Association back in October. We debriefed the Preservation Partners Group. Tell me who else we have briefed. We haven't done all the neighborhood associations, although we clearly can. We briefed the Parks and Rec Commission. I'm sure I'm forgetting who else we briefed. But to your point, it is both a neighborhood space, but it's also a citywide space, which is partly why we are eager to get input from the city as a whole, and not just view it as a neighborhood green space.
Yeah, some sort of prioritization, visioning tool would be helpful. Any other comments or questions from the committee? If not, I will, we do have one member of the public with their hand raised. Okay, I'm gonna go, Mr. Kapantis, you know the drill. I'm going to allow you to talk. If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Steve Kapantis, 23A Wisteria Street, Salem, Mass. First, I want to say thank you to the Friends of the Common. I actually had a detailed conversation with Miss Mary Ann Curtin 2 or 3 months ago regarding accessibility at this location. So it's clear you guys are putting accessibility on the forefront, high on your priority list. We were able to review a lot of things there and talk about the highest priority items, and a clear walkway to the common, curb cuts, and tables that are accessible, but also in accessible locations and benches. And I'm glad to see all of that is in this report. And this is fantastic, right? We're not thinking about this after the fact, before the fact. The last thing I'm going to say was Councilor Prosnewski was correct that this is the most visited park in Salem, but it's also our oldest park with strong historical ties to our city, to our state, and actually to our country. I would love to see more state money and even federal money come in to really protect a gem for our country, not just our city. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr.
We would
Chair.
agree. We've talked about how to showcase the history of Salem and Massachusetts in the Common, and that is on our list of things to pay attention to. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Riccardi. We appreciate your time. We're happy to share our updates with you at any time. So if you'd like us to come back, we are here. And thank you to Councilor Prosnewski and Hapworth, and I'm missing some, Dominguez, with whom we met early on in the door. When we met to explain what we were going to do, and then we met to explain what we had done. So we very much appreciate your interest.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, for coming to speak with us tonight, and of course for all of your work and effort put into this. Parks really are the jewel of our city. Do I have any motions from the PHSC committee for the report? Perhaps we might want to receive and file, or
Councilor Dominguez?
Councilor Dominguez?
I make a motion to receive and keep in file.
Thank you. So Councilor Dominguez moves to receive and file.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Marcillo. I'll take a roll call. Councilor Dibble?
Yes.
Councilor Dominguez?
Yes.
Councilor Marcillo?
Yes.
Councilor Presnewski?
Yes.
And yes for myself. So the matter will receive, we'll post it with the minutes on the website, so, or on the PHSC minutes, so anyone else can view their the report that you shared as well. Thank you again. Appreciate it. And we can move on to our second agenda item of the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My agenda up. So our second agenda item of the evening is actually from an item from 2020 in regards to the ADA petition that resident Steve Kapantis submitted in regards to the ADA transition plan. One, I heard that Jenna would be able to join us this evening, as well as knowing about Jenna's tracker that she put a lot of effort into for the ADA transition plan, along with other ADA items within the city. I kind of jumped on that and asked Jenna if she could also present or share that information with the committee tonight as well, because I was able to see it at the Commission on Disabilities meeting, I think, and spoke to it at the council meeting a few months ago. I'm trying to remember when that was. And it really was just such a great tool and really eye-opening for the number of projects that are around. So Jenna, as well as Alyssa Doherty, who is from the, and I believe, a part-time internship position also with the Institute for the Center of Human Design, and is working with the city to, and helping Jenna, specifically in regards to this reporting and tracking. Please correct me if I'm stating that incorrectly. And we also have Deb Lapschitz from the Commission on Disabilities, the chair of the commission, who saw the demo as well for the ADA transition plan. So with all of that said, Alyssa or Jenna, if you don't mind, if I can throw that over, we can jump right into the demo of the ADA well, is there actually a name for what we're calling the smart sheet tracking?
Right now, we're calling it the Salem ADA MAB tracking, but we can come up with a better name. I'll sort of do an overview of what it is, and then Alyssa, I'll turn it over to you to kind of, I can screen share and show it. But you can kind of talk through, how you approach this and where we are with things and what we're doing. So
Excellent.
I can share my screen. Can folks see that?
Yep.
Okay. So just move it over a little. Move this down.
Hey, how about that?
So this started, we had the Institute of Human-Centered Design did a plan and inventory of our accessible. Most of all our buildings, except for some small park buildings, and then many of our parks, and then some other outdoor spaces such as parking lots and things like that in downtown. And so they did an inventory and sort of identified what we needed to do in order to come into compliance in the city. And so based upon that and the sites they did, in addition, we have had some other studies done that are in this tracking. So I do want to make sure that this is a database that I sort of track inventory information. So when I get things in Excel, essentially, format, and I'm able to pull it into this, and then I sort of associate it with accessibility. So we have had separate studies of Artist Row, Old Town Hall, fire stations, and we had a facility dude study of many of our park buildings. And so if those items were identified, I also pulled those in. And so what we do with this is then we're taking all that data and sort of turning it into a dashboard to sort of better help people understand what's going on. And so we come up with sort of trying to figure out how do we best show where we are with things. When I'll have Alyssa talk through more about how we set this up, and we sort of presented this to the Commission on Disabilities to sort of their feedback. But you'll see sort of different levels of where we are with things, and that's not, sometimes it's not showing in progress because somebody hasn't marked in progress. So this is only as good as people enter. And Alyssa's been working hard with Mike Lutrikowski and the various departments that he works with, and the schools will then be going to the Parks and Rec to sort of try to walk through, understand, update it. Eventually we have to get everybody sort of working on this and updating. Alyssa, do you want to sort of talk more about how you approach this and what we're seeing?
Yeah, so basically there's a lot of issues throughout the city that we need to work on. And we're just trying to go through, and some things, were seen during the review and they've already been fixed. Some things are super simple. Some things are giant projects, so this is all of the improvements, with the blue being what's all of them, and then the purple being what's left. And then, in between is things that either are completed, yellow is in progress, and then the orange is major renovations. As you can see, there are some that weren't needed just because, some things have already changed since the study. So what I'm working on mostly is just going through and seeing what needs to be done and helping Mike Lutrikowski, as well as the schools right now, understand what needs to be done, and then they're kind of facilitating getting those things done. And I'm also helping them to try to keep this tracker up to date. Sometimes it doesn't work as well as we hope, but we are hoping as well to do a presentation to teachers, which will solve a lot of the issues in the school, since it's a lot of setup of classrooms. There are obviously a lot of different issues, but a lot of like the smaller issues that are easily done can be done by just by teachers. So that's like basically no budget, just the time of those teachers. Yeah, just trying to get us up to date on ADA, and it's going to be a slow process, I think, but I think we're definitely starting to get on our way. As you can see, the building department is the department that I'm working on with Mike Lutrikowski. So as you can see, a lot of those are in progress. And other departments I haven't started working with. The fire department we went and saw the other day, and we were able to. I'm also working on with Mike Lutrikowski on that, and he was able to make calls, and we were able to put it in progress like that day. So, yeah.
And and going on that, so you'll see here, some of these only have one, and those are because this not only includes, mostly it's capital assets, sidewalks and, sorry, it's not all the sidewalks in the city, just any, some of the sidewalk or pathways in the parks or just directly leading to the buildings, identified the building assets, but then there's also the website accessibility. I added in for each department, major department and division, for example, the water division of engineering, a sort of task. However, not every subpage of committee did I add, sort of, so you could see that as more. You could see it's like, oh, the clerk has to do everything for the city council, right? That includes all the various websites that they include. So that's why some of these that don't necessarily have capital assets do have at least one to make sure that their website is in compliance. And, a lot of this is, so this is really the small improvements. Most of these, the vast majority are sort of egress. And as Alyssa pointed out, she put a really nice presentation together, particularly for schools, because these are things that are easy to fix, but they're easy things to revert. And a lot of them have to do with people putting things behind doors, so you can't open the door all the way, which is also not good for emergency situations. They put things next to doors, which means you can't easily grab or navigate around the door. They're putting things under sinks where normally if a wheelchair needs to have access, now they can't get access because there's a bunch of boxes under the sink. They have things in the hallway protruding that somebody could bump into. These are like all very fixable things, but they're also easily things that you can move those boxes and then they're just going to move right back. So this is more of an educational and ongoing thing. So we're going to work to sort of mark these in progress and then completed, but it's going to be an ongoing process with those. Many of the other small ones are signage is another big one. And so by small meaning, the pricing that they put into the IHCD report is basically material equipment pricing. It doesn't include labor, escalation, design costs, soft costs, any of that. So I basically double it. And then if it's under 10,000, I call it small, and over 10,000, I call it large. So if I go down here by department, schools, I pull out of that because schools and park and rec dominate. You can see 1,094 of that 1,735 is schools. So they have a lot. And we're just starting to work with them. And most of those are those egress issues, signage issues, and then Park and Rec has quite a few. So we also then have the large projects. So sometimes you see up here, it says, in major renovation. So this would be something like Forest River or Bertram Field. When we are doing a large project or the headquarters of fire, we're redoing the parking lot and the entrance. It did not have an accessible entrance and it will. After this summer. So that's major renovation tracked separately. Those are all tracked separately in my Smartsheet system. So I pull them on here. And then these are all the large projects. We have 40 large projects addressing accessibility. And then we have 10 that are sort of what we mark as sort of universal design or all ages. These might be things that are not necessarily pegged as requirement, but as a good to have. Or something, for example, Riley Plaza, relighting of Riley Plaza, not necessarily required per the ADA code, but it may be something that it will benefit everyone because it will improve the lighting levels. So, and then the large projects that have been identified in various reports, but not yet started are 30. So we have 40, 10, and 30, 40 including. And here's the list of all those projects. So it includes, all kinds of sort of major projects, some of which have been completed. So, and then some which are in implementation and then in study. So various stages of those projects. So that's the overall, report. We do also have here sort of contacts that you can click on. You can click on the link, just like that. And it goes to that link for the Commission on Disabilities. My computer's slow, I apologize. So click on the link. This is something that we could put on our website, a link to this dashboard, once we feel like it's in a, where we want it to be, and it does, we've kind of cleaned up any of the errors or mistakes. And then this kind of gives you the full list of the small projects, which is really a lot, but people had asked for that full list, but there's a lot of information in that. This is the full list of, 1,700 things. So it's taking a while to load, but it's got a lot of information and detail, department, we have IDs, general location, elements, and then, priorities and all that kind of stuff. So that has huge amounts of information. We were fortunate that we were able to work with IHCD to bring on Alyssa and, help us sort of improve this dashboard. And we also want to try to get a sort of the Smartsheet has the ability to say, like, when you finish a project and somebody marks it complete, it can then notify the departments, like Lisa, it could, notify Deb, saying, hey, in the last month, the following projects have been marked complete. Or it could notify Tom St. Pierre is like, hey, they said this is complete. Do you agree? Things like that this is approved. Or this is in progress and it's a big project. Can we make sure to engage building inspector to make sure that we get the accessibility right? So it has a lot of capabilities like that, but, we can sort of, work through as we get improvements in the tracking. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm going to stop sharing.
Great. Well, we may have you pull us back up with our questions, but thank you. And yeah, I think it's an excellent tool because it really helps visualize and put into a digestible manner this really ginormous project that the city has to do. It breaks it down and makes it a little easier to understand and digest. I just had a few quick questions, one of which you actually answered as to whether or not is it internal or external. So it does look like we do have the option to create an external link for the general public to go in and click on that and view that, correct? We just want to get it to a point.
Yes, we can publish those to a website, which we probably publish it to the Commission on Disabilities page and then a link to it. It's just we have to, we want to get it. The commission had a lot of good feedback, and we can send this to you guys, just like the language and does it's understandable for people? Does it make sense? So we put more language in, and like you were saying, what do we title it? There's just all the kind of colors. We were asked to get more brighter, stronger colors. Format and things like that. So just general feedback, and like I said, how much of that sort of raw data do we want to sort of go out with? Because that's just a ton of information. So it may be better to have that in a more digestible format, the lists of projects versus the full report of data. So, which is a lot.
My other question was, in looking at that, like you had the different graphs for the different bars for the different departments, like the library, for example. If I was looking at it, I would want to click on that library piece and see what they had, especially like budget season coming up, to see what items they might have allocated or pinpointed for ADA upgrades. Or is that something that Smartsheets does, or does it just give you the full list and then you have to go through looking through the list?
When you can have it, when you click on the graph, it can go to the source table, but I'm not sure if it's going to go to that list. I think you would have, we can work on it. We may add links like, summary of library or something like that, but I don't think like if you clicked on the library tab, if it would go to just the library list. It's kind of pulling data from a summary sheet that summarizes all that large data. And it's sort of just a table saying, you know, that I use mathematical functions to sort of summarize. So, but we probably could sort of think about ways to sort of put in, you know, by department, go here to get a list of the department, this department's projects. So.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like usability for even somebody within the library department. They might want to know what needs to be worked on or what the items are, just to make it as transparent as and easily to find as possible.
Yeah, we can look at that, and this is why, you know, Alyssa here, she's here to hear feedback and, you know, thoughts. So.
Awesome. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Actually, Councilor McCarthy, I saw you had your hand up earlier.
Thank you, Madam Chair, not being a member of the committee. Thank you, Jenna, and thank you, Alyssa. I guess my first question is, you referenced the school department, and I was wondering, when was the last time that list was updated? Because with all the COVID protocols that are in place, I mean, a lot of that stuff that's on the list is, you know, access issues, paths to travel, and now everything with social distancing and the desks being spaced out and stuff. I wonder how much, when we go back into that list, are we actually going to see that we're, you know, when you look at I mean, that's a large chunk of the items about accessibility. I mean, I'm wondering how much of that list is going to actually be disappear because of the way that now, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, is the way, you know, the kids are coming back to school. Thankfully, they're all coming back in attendance now, is going to be a product of the fact that, you know, with COVID and distancing and everything they're doing, are we going to see a lot of that list get chopped away just because of the way we're conducting business now, as opposed to where we conducted business, you know, whenever this report was commissioned 24 months ago?
Well, Alyssa's been updating schools. The biggest one is the high school, and she has not gone through that yet. So the high school is probably 25% of this. When you say, Alyssa, so it's a big chunk of it. But as we've gone through, like, some of those things, like I said, it's one of these things where the teachers come back to their classroom and then they're like, oh, okay, I want to move this around or this around. A lot of things are very nuanced. It's, you know, when you have a bookshelf, making sure that your bookshelf has books, a variety of books at a certain heights, accessible heights. Obviously, not all bookshelves. You may have higher and lower, but you want to try to have a variety. So you may have, the way you set it up, you may have only books titled B that can be reached within, right? So those types of things. So I think we've seen some of that, but a lot of the stuff was not necessarily like that, sort of putting something next to the door or behind a door wasn't really addressed with COVID. So some of the pathways around the classroom, making sure that they were spread out enough, that was, but a lot of the doorway signage stuff was not. So, but
yeah, I would say
high school.
Yeah, I would say I was also hesitant to, you know, check something off as it being done when I know that it's being set up for COVID and that it's most likely going to be changed back. So I was hesitant to, you know, mark that as complete when we go back to normal, it's no longer going to be complete. But I do think that this presentation for the teachers will definitely solve a lot of these issues. And hopefully when they do go back to whatever regular times means now, that a lot of those issues will be solved. And because I think these are issues that teachers just aren't aware of. Like, I don't think teachers are purposely making their rooms inaccessible. It's just they don't think about that there needs to be 30 inches wide clear space when they set up their classrooms. So once they know that, I think that definitely a lot of those issues will be solved. But what I was seeing when I went to the classrooms is maybe that 36 inches to desks was perfect, like it was super wide, but to the sink now, there's a desk right in front of it. So I didn't want to mark that off as there's no longer an issue with path of travel when there still is. So if that answers your question.
No, it does. I mean, obviously, I want to thank, everybody for their work on this because, I mean, obviously the city asked for its own audit on itself. It wasn't like we asked to audit ourselves. We wanted to see how we were doing compliance-wise. And obviously it's an educational piece for all of us. The school department, ourselves, as caretakers to the, as city councilors, caretakers to the cities, the city parks, the roadways, the sidewalks. I mean, we're all being educated on the fact that, we have to do better. And I think that as a community, we're doing, as the report says, we're doing, with all the efforts from DPS and everybody, we are doing better. I mean, obviously there's always room to do better, but we are, when you read the report, we were, I think we're, as far as municipalities go, I think we're ahead of the curve, but that's not good enough. I think we all want to strive to be the best. And so I think we are trying to get there. And I think it's an understanding of how we utilize the data to get there. Because, it is what it is. And it's a world today that you want to be, as inclusive and as you can be. And I think that we're trying to do that. And that's why we asked to audit ourselves. No one asked us to audit ourselves. We did it ourselves to find out, we paid for the study to find out where we could do better. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And I think when we get into these big capital projects, obviously that's what we want to do, but it's, on the everyday stuff, you don't think about it. You send your kids to school. I sent my kids to school for 12 years. You were just assuming that they were in a safe environment where everyone had accessibility. And, if it comes down to as simple as something Melissa just said, moving a desk away from the sink is going to make, check one of the boxes. I mean, you would hope that once they get through that educational piece with the teachers, that work, it works itself out when you'd see a big decrease in some of those items. So I want to thank Jenna and Alyssa for all their efforts. I mean, obviously, as they continue to go through and work through these educational pieces, and as there's a bunch of city councils on here, and we work with the various departments and DPS to resolve some of these issues. I think it's, it's more of an educational piece. And the one last thing I just want to say is happy birthday to Councilor Masillo. She's smiling. I sent her a text earlier during the meeting. I said, happy birthday. She smiled at the screen, but it is her birthday today. So happy birthday. She took the time out of her birthday to come with us. And, because it is very important that, as we move forward as a city, we want to be inclusive as we can. Obviously realizing the fact that we're going to stumble along the way. We're going to make mistakes. But how we, address those mistakes and how we correct them as best we can is of the vast importance to everybody on this screen. Is how we move forward to make sure that, Salem, we forget, Salem is going to be 400 years old soon. 400 years old. We got 400 years of some problems with regards to egress and accessibility, and we're trying to fix them. And you can't just fix them with one, wave of the magic wand, so to speak. We're doing the best we can, but obviously we all want to strive to do better. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Counselor. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the cake later, right? Enough for everyone here. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Councilor Dominguez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question through you to Gina. Do you have any amount on what is the total to at least bring those issues for the first, I mean, not the complete project because we know it's big as we see in the graph. Do you have any idea on numbers? What are we talking about? And also, if there is any help from the state or federal on those fixing that we need to do as a city to comply with the ADA? That's my two questions to you.
So for the small projects, which as I indicated, I would say the estimate's low, but just taking their estimate, it's subtotaling to 1.2 million. for the small projects. Some of these are easy fixes or zero, but that includes some of the zero. But I would say that's probably going to be higher than that. For the large projects, that's really hard to estimate because, those are individually, they're all part of larger projects. So I don't really have an estimate for the larger, but those are, a lot of the ones that are not sort of embedded in other projects are like playground upgrades, and those Ray can talk to you. I mean, the route of access around playgrounds and accessible playgrounds is, sometimes 50 to 100,000 to provide that, depending on, if you have to create a route from the parking lot to the playground and then around the playground and within the play units in the playground, or if you're repouring and, like I said, the sort of accessible route, things like that. So, and money from the state, yes, they do have funding from the Mass Architectural Access Board. I believe that we have put in for a grant. We did get the grant to help us with this study, but it's very overprescribed. So I can't remember, Deb, what the numbers they told us, but they think it's like, they had $10 million worth of requests and they only got $1 million. So they were like way overprescribed. So we did not get it. We will put in every year and try to get some funding. They clearly need to fund it more. But I will say almost every grant that the state gives for almost anything else almost always includes that you have to meet accessibility. And if you're doing sort of above and beyond and doing a lot of things, that sort of goes to your scoring. So all the park projects, if you're sort of doing accessibility upgrades, projects for parks and for roads and a bunch of other things, they you get more points and you score higher if you're addressing significant accessibility issues that are preventing people from accessing programs. So those are for like a road project, and then you get additional money because you're also addressing accessibility.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question, if I may, Madam Chairman. Do you have any idea of any plan that the city might envision to kind of start targeting maybe the little pieces you mentioned in your presentation, and Alicia mentioned that is an education aspect that needs to be taking place. There is any plan, any idea of how we're going to target those little things that starting to get resolved? I mean, there is any information that you can give out to us or to the public on a plan that you envision to have to put in place? And also, yes, second, very part of this one, but I know that ADA also had to do with the different diverse group of people that we have in Salem. If those education plan include the diverse that we had in Salem. For example, just to mention language category, we have a group of people who doesn't speak English. There is some people who speak different languages and maybe have some different need based on the income level or whatever it is. There is any idea on those areas that can be shared with us and for the general public, especially that might be seeing this meeting, so they can have an idea that their needs also is going to be taken into consideration?
So on the first question, last year we started sort of carving out the bucket, sort of adding up these numbers and by department, and then some of the larger for whatever we do have estimates for, and then sort of saying, okay, if we broke this over 5 or 10 years, how much would it cost per year per department? So, the big two are the schools and the park and rec. Everybody else is, basically in 5 years, we can chunk it out. That's one approach, and so, for example, building department really use their money to address a bunch of different items in the building, whether it be taking down the bike racks or fixing, they have the doors and a bunch of other areas they've been fixing. Police have used some of their money for the smaller items, but they're addressing some of the large items they have, which is like the auditorium seating. So each department's kind of looking at what they have. We're also looking at sort of how, and Alyssa's been helping, we're kind of trying to study the data, like what category is it under, better understand. We have a lot of signs. So can we, the building department's working with an architect to sort of combine the signage for, City Hall Annex, and a couple other sites to say, okay, we need to fix the signage. Let's get an architect to sort of put together a package that we can bid. So we're not just doing it individually. So we'll have things that all match and hopefully get better pricing because we're doing it with one larger procurement versus, lots of little procurements. So that's one way to approach. I think we'll probably do that for the schools. We'll need something like that, and Park and Rec, where we sort of combine a bunch of small issues into one, and try to procure it. I think education is important, continuing on with that. So there's a variety of ways. I think we really need to analyze the data a little better. I think, Trish has been sort of trying to take on some of the sort of specific projects in, for example, the Common or Winter Island, sort of trying to address those. That's the overall. I think we're still looking at the data to sort of come up with a more specific plan about sort of how do we deal with this sort of small stuff in the most efficient way. And then Alyssa will be helping with that. On the sort of for the other items, I think that is an important point you make. And I think that's why I think we have to think about this not just from, one perspective, but, from a universal design or for, a different perspective of like, it's not just about accessibility sometimes. Sometimes you can approach things, for example, Bertram Field, when we're redoing that, we're putting in a sign that will talk about the sustainability of the project. Now that sign will have to be accessible, and we'll have to make sure that that sign is visible, accessible. But we were also, talking about, for some of our signage having a QR code so somebody can then, do we have a website that then can have that information and can translate it into a variety of languages. For Bertram Field, we're going to actually translate it right on the sign into Spanish, just because, that the sustainability, we have enough room and we really want to kind of have that sort of welcoming aspect of that. So I think there's, sometimes it's just about fixing accessibility, right? Like you have a rug and it's like trippable, and so you need to secure it down. But, when it comes to signage, you can think of it from an accessibility perspective, but you can also think of it, not only just having Braille, but also like, what kind of signage is it important for us to translate? Or how, do we need to make it bigger or more visible, even though it may meet the ADA requirements? Sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean that it is usable for everyone. That it's like people read it and they understand it and they're clear about what they're supposed to do. The ADA is very specific about some things, but they don't cover everything, and they don't cover the sort of diversity of how people see things and perceive things and navigate in the world. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Jenna. I see Deb has had her hand raised. Deb? And then Councillor Dibble. Sorry, I see you poked my turn too.
Okay, I just want to clarify, backing up to the first question about funding, state funding. The Massachusetts Office on Disabilities provides grant money yearly. They were the ones who funded the study that the Institute for Human-Centered Design did. We've applied for grant monies from them every year. I think it's been for the past 5 or 6 years. We've hounded them on a yearly basis. And part of the reason that we had the transition plan done, the evaluation done by the Institute for Human-Centered Design, was because it was required. The city of Salem had to have a current transition plan in place in order to qualify for those grant monies, which will continue at least for the next 5 years out. I was looking to see if I had the specifics, the details on the amounts, and that sort of thing in a file that I could grab, but I don't. So I just wanted to give you the backdrop that there is funding from the state. It also deserves to be said that our representatives, Joan Lovely and Paul Tucker, have been amazing advocates for us in acquiring other funding sources for some accessibility features in our parks and other public areas. Each of the commissioners on the Commission on Disabilities in Salem has their own specialty, or they're most familiar with a particular area. My background is in deafness. We have several representatives from other broad categories of disabilities, and we all stay in tune with where there's funding and who can come to assist the cities and towns with improving accessibility features. So we do try and stay on top of that just in our local Commission on Disabilities. The local Commission on Disabilities also receives all of the monies from the parking fines that are received when somebody uses an accessible parking spot or uses one of the tags that says you qualify to use an accessible parking spot. If anybody is ticketed for either of those offenses, that money is channeled to the Commission on Disabilities, and we make that available for improvements to make Salem a more accessible place. So yes, we are seeking other funding sources, not only as an ongoing activity, but we're fairly tenacious about it, I guess is what I'll say. So the only other comment I wanted to make was just that as my experience of chair of the Commission on Disabilities and prior to that when I was a commissioner, I have to say I found Salem as a city to be very responsive to the needs of people with disabilities, and it was kind of hard to see that. So one of the purposes of this dashboard, and it's an excellent tracking tool, and it helps everybody know clearly what's going on. But I thought it was really important to underline all that is being done in the city in an effort to make it a more accessible city. And this dashboard helps us to see that it's an ongoing process, that so many of these projects are buried in a larger project. It's not always clear, but the improvements, Salem is a very dynamic city when it comes to making improvements with regard to accessibility. So I wanted to state that again and give credit to all the people who are working so hard to make that happen.
Thank you, Deb. Yeah, very good points. Any other member from the committee? Councillor Dibble, did you wish to speak? Yeah. Councillor Dibble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd have to agree with Deb's comments and the comments by Councilor McCarthy and Councilor Dominguez earlier. And to thank Jenna and Alyssa for not only creating, but using this, I don't want to call it a list, it's a tracking program, if you would. I think it's important to get this thing out into the hands of probably all the department heads, if they probably already have it, or at least a printout of it, but also get it posted so the public can see and into the hands of the Commission on Disabilities so they can use it. I do have a couple of questions, but I thought this was important to hear from Steve Kapanis, who's in the audience, that he's the one who started this whole ball rolling, not a year ago, but I think it was the middle of last summer. And it took forever to get a hearing or results of the hearing. So I'm glad we're at this point. But before I ask my questions, Steve is the petitioner who signed this thing. I'd like to hear from them first, if we can, Madam Chair.
Steve, Steve, you know the drill. Please state your name and address for the record. I see your hand is up. There you go.
Steve Kapatzis, 23A Wisteria Street. I really want to say a whole bunch of positive things, but before I get to the positive, I want to lead with an area that still needs to be improved. The city cannot continue to complete projects that don't comply, so they just get piled onto the list. It may sound minor, but the signage that was just put down at Winter Island regarding the new geofilter that they put in, that sign was installed on the other side of an 8-inch curb and halfway up a hill, so there's no accessibility to the signage that describes it. I've already spoken to the city solicitor. I think things are going to be taken care of. So one area of improvement. On to some of the great things here. First, I guess if I have to go through the chair to Ms. Ide, thank you so much for sharing this with me. I have smart sheets. I use it on a daily basis and have been shared the link. And I started about 3 years ago down a path of trying to improve accessibility. And I will tell you that there were times I felt like I was in a kayak going upstream against a Category 5 river. I really felt like it was pulling teeth. I can tell you that over the last several months that this is getting organized. I'm actually seeing work done, right? It's not like we're just going to plan all the work and then do it. It's happening concurrently. There's work being completed. There's projects being done. I feel now that this is kind of like that snowball that's rolling down the hill and starting to gain a bunch of momentum. Right? We're seeing the work. We know it needs to get done, and a lot of things are getting done. And I can't say enough to Ms. Ide, to Ms. Doherty, to Ms. Camarada, to Ms. Deb Lopsitz and the Commission on Disabilities. This has become a standing topic at the Commission on Disabilities. And we have a plan in place now. And I look forward. It's going to be a long time, right? We're going to complete this plan probably in 3 to 5 years, and we'll have another one. And we'll have another one. I think Mr. McCarthy mentioned earlier, we're a 400-year-old city. We're in a 400-year-old mess, so to speak. It's going to take a long time, but I really see this now laying out. It's getting momentum, and I look forward to the next, if I'm here for 20 or 25 years, the continuous improvement that's going to happen over that time frame. So I thank this committee, and more importantly, I thank the city departments and the Commission on Disabilities that we're now in a place, I can see it, I can feel it, it's happening, you know, and I really do feel, I know I'm kind of monotone at times, but I am excited and truly thankful, and it's just fantastic. It's moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Councilor Goodwill?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for entertaining having them come in early in the meeting. One of the things he just touched upon was on the city building things that are not in compliance. That's frustrating to me, but sometimes it's just human error. That we don't catch it along the way, or that the designer or the consultant who designed something did not catch it in his design, or the builder might have built things the wrong way. So all along the way, we didn't catch it. But I guess my question on this one would be, through you, Madam Chair, to, I guess, Jenna Ide, is that when this happens, sometimes it's costly to make these repairs or alterations or changes so that we get it right and it's back into compliance or better design. Do we go after the designers, the consultants who designed this thing, or the builders who built them, to have them pay for the work to get this thing fixed? I have never heard of us go after them, at least recently. When years ago we did. We brought them in and made them make these repairs at their expense. So if Jenna can touch upon that briefly.
So thank you for everybody for bringing up a bunch of things. And you know, some of the stuff I'm hearing, I just want to thank you, Deb, for correcting me on who was the granting authority, and some other things. And, you know, I think one thing I hear, and, you know, I think we have to work on, Alyssa, is, you know, how do we add things that are, you know, we can add things internally, but there's a way in Smartsheet to sort of create a form where somebody can sort of say, you know, hey, this is out of compliance, or, you know, it was supposed to be in compliance, but it's not, now we have to fix it. So I think that's something that we can add and look to making it easy to sort of add or sort of keep issues in progress until they're actually fully completed out. So I think, you know, there's a lot of different projects, and then, you know, you fix a lot of things and then something may not be fixed. You know, I think how we get the contractor, the designer, this is something, and we've talked about it when we had meetings, you know, with IHCD, talked to them about, this is common, almost every project when I work for the state, it's common to have these issues. There's a whole set of things that you need to sort of put in place to try to ensure it doesn't happen. Holding the contractor responsible, yes, but if it's the designer's fault, then you have to hold the designer responsible. Sometimes the designer, sometimes it's still going to cost you extra because, you know, nobody really sort of fully made the fall, and it's very unclear how to sort of press one or the other. So I think, you know, overall, yes, Steve, we really do need to sort of work in a process to better, and I think we've talked about this at the Commission on Disabilities, to better sort of review the designs to make sure that we're addressing everything, make sure the contractor does it, and to really incorporate that into the final closeout of the project, the final payment of the designer and the team to ensure that we actually get it fixed. And you know, it's frustrating. I get it from everybody, from, you know, Steve, the other people, you know, people managing the project. It's really frustrating because, you know, signage is a big one, right? Like, you make this sign, we did it at Gallows Hill, and then they install it, and it's like, why did you install it not at grade, right? Like, you know, and so like those loops are very, very difficult. And so we, I think one of the other things is we talked about like training teachers and others, better training internally of our project managers, you know, to pay a designer to be there every single day as something's being constructed is exceedingly expensive, right? You only do that for major construction projects. But otherwise, paying a designer, clerk of the works, or whoever to be there every day is very expensive to check the work of the contractor, right? So I think what we really need to do as a staff is have better people watching this, better trained, better sort of checking things as you go through the process to make sure that everybody knows. You know, you do the way the construction's bid, it's low bid, right? Lowest qualified bidder. But qualifications don't include, do you do a good job when you install your accessible ramp? So, you know, and so those kinds of things get lost. And I think I appreciate the comments, and I think that is something we also, this tracking is not going to take care of, you know, that's more of on the education side. We can sort of flag it when it hasn't been done, but I think there's just a lot more education, really helping people. I don't, you know, we talk about, you know, Steve, that simple thing of a sign and it being installed where people can get to it and see it. And yet, you know, and all the things you're doing, that's something that gets lost, and then we have to go and fix it, right? And I think, you know, a lot of the project managers, even though they went through the presentation, there was so much information, and they just didn't catch that, right? And you can say that same for the contractors. Now, the designers they should all have had the training and know how to do this, but they don't do it right a lot. It's not always the contractor. Sometimes the contractor's going, well, you told me I can show you the drawings. You did this, right? So hopefully we can have better education, better controls in place to get this right the first time. And if it's not done right, as you said, make sure that we hold all the responsible parties there and make them fix it.
Madam Chair, while I have the floor, it's not always about fixing it after the fact. My point was that, and Jen, it's not on you to cross your T's so far that you need to find any mistakes in the design along the way. It's really up to the designer to make sure that they design it correctly. So should it be wrong and the contractor built it to the specifications in the plans, then it should be up to the city to tell the designer that this is wrong, it's been built this way, find a solution that doesn't cost the city of Salem a penny to get it fixed. The designer needs to do a better job in the design, or the builder needs to do a better job in the building. But it shouldn't always come back to the city. Even though we signed off on the design, that's okay. It's an errors and omission on the architect or the consultant who designed it. Madam Chair, I just want to point out that I had the privilege of serving as the liaison on the Commission of Disabilities for quite some time. I think I attended every single meeting during that period. And at one point we discussed, actually Deb, you would know, we discussed increasing the parking fines from, I think it was 50 to 100. And then we discussed about just expanding it right up to the maximum was $300. And we did so, and the city council voted on that. This is for signage at accessible parking spaces. And then we talked about adding the wording to the bottom of the sign, which I thought was really, really good idea. That we warned people basically by saying on the sign that I think it just simply says $300 fine on the signs. But there should be a kitty of money now. And through you, Madam Chair, Deb, and the Commission on Disabilities, I support what you do, but I think we need to do more of these type of changes, not just on signs, but whatever we can do. The tables are a good thing, but we should be doing so much more. Not things that are required, but things that we need and want and should have throughout the city. I'm wondering how much money do we have in our kitty through the fines that people are paying, that we could maybe knock off some of the things that are on Jenna's list. It's not a list, I said it again, on Jenna's program, and speed up better accessibility to the whole city. So, Madam Chair, that's a question through you to Deb.
That's already in place. We have a subcommittee on the Commission on Disabilities that evaluates how to use the funding that we have. I can't give you the specific numbers. It's not an enormous amount of money, but it is earmarked for improvements. We've already made some. We purchased audible alerts for an intersection for the crosswalks. An intersection, we've purchased assistive listening devices and accessible picnic benches and you know, a number of other things that I can't just rattle off the top of my head. But we are basically monthly evaluating where and how to put that money to use for these projects that have already been designated, and also for any requests that might come from the public. So we have increased the fine as high as it can go. Once you get into fines for other infractions, like builders who haven't done things correctly, that actually has to go through a different set of agencies and is dealt with at the state level. But there are ways already established that you can fine someone for not doing their job correctly when it comes to accessibility.
Thank you, Deb. Any further questions, Councilor Goodall?
No, I'm good. Thank you so much, Deb, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other members from the committee? And Steve, I see your hand is still raised. Did you have another comment?
No, I must have just left it that way. Sorry. Okay. Thank you.
Checking. Yep. Great. Awesome. Yep. So I'll just reiterate the thanks. Definitely appreciate it. And we're coming up right at the top of the hour. So I appreciate you sticking around for the meeting and sharing this information. I do agree. It is great to not just see what is in process and what needs to be done, but also to see the completed ones is very helpful. And just a great piece of information and a huge level of transparency that we can provide.
Thank you for the invite. So, appreciate the opportunity to show our work. So,
very good. Councilor Goodall?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we report back a favorable response on the progress that was presented here by Jenna Ide and her whole team and Deb. But I'd like to see this remain in committee so that we can continue address issues as we go forward as a useful tool. So I suggested it just stay in committee.
Second.
Okay, so Councillor Dibble moves to keep this in committee, report out if they, what was that? Sorry, can you repeat what you wanted to report out?
Oh, to give a favorable update on the progress that we made so far.
And then the need to keep it in committee is, what were your reasons for keeping it in committee?
I think it's kind of obvious that if we need to tackle this again, which we most likely will, it will all be in committee. We can call a meeting and address it immediately.
Sure,
we have so many projects on the program, 1,500 or whatever the number was, I forget, 1,559 small items remaining, never mind all the large ones. So this effort is not done. We've got a long way to go, and I think we should just leave it in committee.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't disagree that this effort is not done. We do have a long way to go. I just don't know what the benefits of keeping it in the committee would be. We can definitely do another order if an item comes up to bring it back to committee. I know that this is a standing agenda item on the Commission on Disabilities. They also have their own subcommittee within the commission specific towards the ADA transition plan items. But this was a motion, so I will, I'll go down the roll call. Councillor Dibble?
Yes.
Councillor Dominguez?
Yes.
Councillor Marcillo?
No.
Councillor Presnitsky?
Yes.
And we'll say no, but the matter will carry 3-2. And do I see any other motions?
I guess motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Councillor Dibble?
Yes.
Dominguez?
Yes.
Dominguez? Councillor Marcillo?
Yes.
Councillor Presnitsky?
Yes.
And yes for myself, and we are adjourned. So thank you everyone again. Appreciate the comments and feedback tonight. Have a good night.
Good night.